How do I get women I date to stop thinking I'll be unfaithful if they're always suspicious?
So the thing to keep in mind is no one will ever do or say anything to you that isn't a direct reflection of how they feel about themselves in a moment. And if somebody's insecure or they're fearful or they're afraid they're going to get left, they tend to project those things. And especially so if they're dishonest and they're disloyal. And so the mindset that people who are dishonest and disloyal tend to have, and the way their model of the world, their reality filter that they interpret the world, is that if they're a liar and a cheater, they believe everybody else is like that, given the right circumstances.
Yeah.
And so if they're what they're typically doing, especially if it's over and over, and a guy is a good dude and he's constantly getting accused of doing something wrong, you're either dealing with a really insecure girl, which means you need to put her in her place
Mm-hmm.
and have a conversation with her and set some boundaries and just say, look, I'm a loyal and faithful guy. I've always been loyal and faithful to my girlfriends, and I don't appreciate you accusing me of these things. If I wasn't happy, I would just leave you and then I would go find somebody else. I would break it off and be honest with you about how I felt, and then I would go find somebody else. I wouldn't do it behind your back.
Right.
And so if you're insecure about it, then that's something you need to fix. It's
Mm-hmm.
like I want to equal. I want a teammate. I don't want somebody that's constantly accusing me of doing this or doing that. And so I had a girlfriend that was like that. We'd be hanging out. We could be on a double date, and if she thought my conversation with a girl was too friendly, she'd be like you were flirting with her. That girl liked you. She wants to sleep with you and stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that. And I had enough of it. And I just, in her credit, she never brought it up again.
Yeah.
And she was a good, loyal, and faithful person, but from her perspective, she had watched her father cheat on her mother and their relationship and their marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And so she saw growing up, and then even some of her parents' closest friends, she saw they cheated on each other
Yeah.
and stayed together. So from even though they came from a successful kind of wealthy background, it's like the fathers, the patriarchs of the family, had cheated on the wives.
Mm-hmm.
And so she saw that, she believed that, plus she was young. She'd been cheated on by guys in the past. So it's understandable. But if they're a good, loyal person, when you set that boundary, they'll say, you know what, you're right. I'm basically making you, in essence, deal with my trauma from whether it's my family or my past relationships or whatever. It's not that she's reacting to you because of how you're showing up. It's because she's reacting to what's happened in her past.
Right.
And so when you set the boundary and she respects you, it won't happen again.
Mm-hmm.
But if somebody's doing something wrong and they're giving out their number, or they're giving the guys at work the green light to try to seduce them, or to go out for just drinks, hey, we're just all friends here kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And she, in essence, acts like she's single because she's giving other men the green light instead of saying, hey, sorry, I have a boyfriend. I can't do that. That's, I'm flattered, but no thank you, which a good woman would do. The liar and the cheater is going to give out her phone number. She's going to go meet a dude for just friendly drinks.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe start out with a group, but then everybody leaves and it's just her and the single guy.
Yeah.
And so when somebody continues to be accusatory after you've set the boundary, well, then they're continuing to violate that. And then that's when you really should look at it and go, you're still bringing this up. You're still accusing me of these things. And
Yeah.
typically when people do that, they project what's inside. And so that causes me to wonder, can I trust you? Because what the guy also sees is that not only is she saying these things, but he's seeing her behavior
Mm-hmm.
is a little off. It's a little weird. Her phone's always face down. You know, she shows up late. She'll tell you things or tell you what happened or who she was hanging out with. And then a week later, she's talking about the same event, and then details come out and they're a little different or contradictory
Mm-hmm.
to what she sold the week before. And those are the things that you got to look and you got to pay attention to because it's part of the vetting process. And so when you take a guy who's in love and he's happy and he's infatuated, when he sees those little things and inconsistencies pop up, he'll tend to brush them under the rug and just, buy whatever BS, explanation he gets.
Mm-hmm.
But, people can hide who they are for about the first 90 days of a relationship. And so the longer you're together, it's, usually 6 to 12 months. That's when you can really kind of tell what's going on and what you're dealing with if she's a trustworthy person. But it's not a good sign if somebody's insecure and then they're constantly accusing you of doing something after you've already talked about it.
Now, what if he gave her a reason to be untrustworthy and she chose like to forgive him or something, but it's still something that will pop up in
Yeah,
her
well,
head?
that's a different scenario,
Mm.
and because I get those too. Guys are like, "Yeah, I cheated. I slept with my girlfriend's best friend, or I slept with a girl from the office, or I
Yeah.
kissed a girl when I got drunk, or something."
Mm-hmm.
And if a guy is loyal or and is capable of it, it won't happen. He won't do those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
But guys that constantly put themselves in situations like that, or we've had a few emails recently where guys are like, "Oh, I'm just gonna have a few drinks, no big deal." And then they wake up the next day and I don't remember anything from the night before, and they're out grabbing other girls' asses, and his girlfriend's best friend's ass or whatever, and and he's about to get pummeled by the girl's boyfriend, and so everybody's pissed off,
Yeah.
and he has no recollection of it. It's stuff like that where you just, as a man, you lose self control.
Yeah.
And I saw in some of the comments, another guy, same thing. He was guilty of that, drinking too much, and bad things would happen because
Mm-hmm.
he'd get blackout drunk, and then he realized, I'm just gonna drink some beer. That was like what I did when I was younger. I realized if I drank liquor because I just liked drinking,
Yeah.
that I would get to the point where I would remember what happened, or I'd be blowing chunks in short order, or the room would
Yeah.
start spinning. And that's why I learned to just kind of stick with beer, like a
Mm-hmm.
watered down light beer and water if I'm going to go out and
Yeah.
spend the whole afternoon or evening drinking with friends, just so. And then doing shots and stuff is like, most of the time I'd stay away from that stuff
Mm-hmm.
because then you're gonna blow chunks. You do it enough, you get sick enough, you get tired of it.
Right. Yeah. Now, how would they cope with that then in that situation?
Well, where he's cheated on his girlfriend and
Like
she's
he's
given him a
just,
second chance.
yeah, cheated or just done sneaky things that have crept up and caused her to just not trust him.
Well, typically, most of the time, people typically don't change who they are. They may become a better version. So somebody, it's a lying, cheating scumbag. It's not just going to be that relationship he's done that in. He's going to have done that from other girls in the past that he's been with.
Yeah.
And so you just have to look at somebody's actions, even because everybody, when they get caught, oh, I'm sorry, it'll never happen again. Yeah, I'm a change man, or I'm a change woman. It's like, no, they're not. When they're not happy, typically are kind of selfish and narcissistic, and that's just kind of their personality. They feel entitled to
Yeah.
do it. They can't help themselves. They refuse to exercise self control, and it's like if somebody does it once, the old saying, hey, shame on you.
Mm-hmm.
But if I forgive you and then you do it again, it's like, well, then shame on me because I gave you a second chance. In other words, I created the conditions where you could burn me again.
Right.
And typically, the only thing that makes most human beings change their behavior is pain.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in this case, if it's the guy and he's constantly cheating and lying and being unfaithful, eventually he's going to meet a girl that just knocks his socks off and he's like, this is amazing.
Right.
And she's going to dick him over so bad
Mm-hmm.
that and just dick him down so hard that it's like it's gonna sting, it's gonna scar him, it's gonna hurt him, and then that's when you reap the karma. It's like you'll reap the karma 10 times worse
Yeah.
than you dished it out.
Yeah.
And so that's typically the way life works. Whatever you sow, you're gonna reap down the road.
Yeah, in spiritual sense, I say that God will never let you be happy with your significant other if you're causing harm to them or doing like malicious bad things behind their back. So you might be asking this question, but like if you're not being loyal, then that's your karma. Like she's never going to be happy with you and she's never going to trust you. So either you make a change or move on and start new with someone where you can start fresh and
Yeah,
not
because
have that.
people that are irredeemable, they'll be good for a while, maybe 90 days or whatever, and then once they feel like they're back in and you trust them again,
Yeah.
they just slowly start going back to the same way that they used to behave.
Mm-hmm.
I had a guy that used to work for me, and he was a really good salesman back when I was in real estate, but he was always doing things and not dotting his I's or crossing his T's, or like if a deal blows up like 48 hours before it's supposed to close and he's trying to find a lender to do it, the customer's calling going, hey, is my loan approved yet? Are we closing? How much I got to bring to close? Where is it, the title company?
Mm-hmm.
And they would just ignore the people to the point. And that's the second most stressful thing people do next to getting married in life is
Yeah.
buying a home. And so you got the second most stressful thing that people do in their lives, buying a home, and they're supposed to move in 48 hours. They're packing their whole lives up. They've told all their family and friends. They've probably driven a bunch of them by the house going, this is, we're going to close next week.
Yeah.
And then 2 days before, you're dodging them.
Mm-hmm.
And, then they get really upset. They get really fearful. They get scared. They get mad. And so this guy, I mean, eventually he would figure it out, and then he would finally call him back once he had a lender,
Right.
and they'd be glad that he called and got back to him and got the deal closed. But they would never refer any friends or family just because he put them through emotional hell.
Right.
And on top of that, it's like all the complaints where people would get mad and write in complaints or complain to the state or whatever. It was always him or one of his agents because he was always, a little shady. We used to joke, we call him Slim Shady.
Oh, wow.
And he thought it was, a funny type thing, but we call him Slim Shady just because he would do stuff that was like walk right up to the line, the gray area,
Right.
and push things. And sometimes the shit would blow up in his face. And so it was always the same dude that was just, then you got to step in as the owner of the company and smooth it over. But I mean, the damage is done. The relationship is fucked because people don't trust him anymore. And
Yeah.
you're not going to get any referrals from that. And they're definitely not going to go out and say good things about your business.
Yeah.
And so it's important to, judge people by what they do, by what they say.
Yeah.
And that guy never really changed. He became a little better. Those things didn't happen as much, but they still happened.
Right. Yeah.
And, even I've got friends that have done loans and stuff with him, over the last, 5, 10 years. It's the same thing. He'd tell them something over the phone, and then they would get there and they'd see the loan paperwork, and then the numbers would be higher than what he promised.
Right.
And then, they would ask him what's going on, and then he would do what was, fast talk. He'd start talking real fast. So if you ever, trying to buy something and the salesperson starts talking real fast, that means like you should really pay attention.
Right. Yeah.
Because he's trying to cover up for something. And then clients would say that, he would start fast talking, and he would just try to overwhelm with facts and figures and information and, buzzwords,
Yeah.
closing statement and the HUD and all these different things. And they would, and it would work for people that weren't that smart, but, people that were sharp, they would realize what he was doing, and it would just create problems. So there's just, those people have a history of that. And so once you see that, it's like, we were talking about this earlier. We all have friends that we know that keep getting involved with either the same type of people, and then those people come back, and then they get burned again, and they're like, that's it. And then they come back, and they get burned again, and it's like, it always ends the same way. People aren't compatible, or they're not compatible. But when you love somebody, you're projecting your fantasy of what you want them to be onto them. And then so you see the fantasy despite the fact their actions don't match the fantasy.
Right.
And that's hard to see when you're in that infatuation mode.
That's
we
subtle.
we make our decisions based on our emotions, especially you ladies. Way more so. That's why you'll date, a guy that's an abusive dick, or he's broke as a joke, and yet you'll continue, if he'd be perfect boyfriend, I could just fix this about him. If I could just get him to hold down a stable job and pay his rent on time, he'd be great.
Horrible.
And then you make excuses for it.